Yeah, we're up here smiling. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Bible class, to the Matt and Mac edition.
I'm so glad to be up here on this stool today.
If I put my hand on your lower back
Actually,
like
would
that,
help a lot. You got to hold taut, though.
I'm not comfortable doing that. Well, welcome, everybody. Good to see y'all here today. It is December 21st. Can you believe it? December 21st. Maybe this is just like getting old. The experience of getting old is thinking, how is it already fill in the blank?
I never know what day it is. I'm very old.
But how is it already the end of the year, right? How is it already December? But here we are. Seems like just a few weeks ago we put up these banners and began talking about peculiar people in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 9. And yet here it is at the very kind of last week and a half of that theme. And so one of the things that we like to do as we wind down the year is to have some time where we're all together in Bible class and review the theme together and just think together a little bit about what we've said this year. I think that's really good work to, well, Mac, you're a teacher.
That's true.
Review and reiteration, are those good principles for learning?
They are. I get bored with them, so I don't do them enough, but they are good. So I'm glad you've had this idea to do this morning.
So we're reviewing and reiterating some things that we've talked about this year. So I hope that as you're sitting there listening to us speak, that maybe your mind is going back over the last 11, 12 months of what we've talked about. I know that might be really challenging for some of you this morning, halfway through your coffee.
I felt that after we talked with the class, I thought, I'll review back over what we've done in Bible classes and what Matt's preached about. And I pay attention at church. When I was a youth minister, I got in the habit of that. I started really listening closely to the sermons, and I thought, wow, these are better than I thought they were. It turns out my attitude changed things, but looking back over them, I thought, man, I'd forgotten so many of the lessons and so many of the classes and things. We just sort of get in the routine. So I do like that is stopping for a minute and going back just to say, what's the year been? But I also was struck by how things that I didn't forget. Like, for example, if somebody had said to me, what was the theme for the year? I hadn't forgotten that. Are y'all the same? If someone had said to you yesterday and you didn't have the banners up, y'all got like a theme at your church for the year, would you have known what it was? I feel like we've kind of wrung this one, all the juice out of this one more than some years.
I think it still has some juice. I don't feel like it's out of juice.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like we've leaned into the theme a lot. That's all I'm saying.
It's got to last us another 9 days, man. We're not quite done.
40 minutes of class here.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
So
you don't know what's coming next, Miss Linda. Just wait.
It's a year and a half worth, too. I think we're going to elongate the theme. So more on that later. All right, so what we want to do here at the very beginning, just to kind of spur some thought from us, is for us to review just a little bit of some of the content that we've had this year. So I wanted to start with some of my sermon series, which is the easier job this morning because Mac has the Bible classes, which are like a gazillion.
I went back and listed them all, and I thought, I'll just remind everybody all the classes we offered. It would take 40 minutes to read them all, but I'll list several. And our verse, too. Let's start with our verse.
Why not?
Before you jump into the sermons.
Go ahead.
If someone were to say to you, what is the theme verse for the year? Would you remember it? If you couldn't quote it perfectly, would you remember what Peter says? I'll just read it. 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 9. But you, and I think Matt said this in his sermons throughout the year, the you is plural here, y'all. But y'all are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people in the King James, or in the ESV, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. He goes on and says, once you were not a people, now you are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, now you have received mercy. That's a verse I don't think we've wrung all the juice out of. Yeah. That's one that keeps giving.
Well, in the King James Version, how many of y'all use the King James Version regularly? Wow, several. That's impressive. Or New King James. How many are New King James? I know my mom likes the New King James. Mm-hmm. We were kind of raised on the New King James back home. It's kind of handy for some themes, because a few years ago, the theme verse was "We would see Jesus," which I really liked, but that was from the King James also, because the wording wasn't right in the other. So a lot of times we don't go to the King James until we're looking for a theme.
Well,
I
the
think.
wording is better. Remember, I think it
Wording,
was
yeah.
2 years ago that you and I decided to read through the King James in a year. I was really blessed by it. I mean, there's all sort of interesting things about the translation, but just to hear that language again was real blessing.
Peradventure, that was one in Genesis, peradventure. Robin, what does peradventure mean? Maybe. It means maybe. So that was, hey,
come
yeah,
about.
King James. Okay, I won't put you on the spot again, Robin. You're done for today. All right, so some of the themes for some of the series that I gave, which were about 3 in number. So
I did a
was
lot of
looking
Bible
back
classes.
Over, I thought, what happened to all my sermons? But
That's what
I
we thought
preached
too.
preached about 41, 42 sermons this year. The first one that I did was just a series through 1 Peter. I don't know if you remember that, but because our theme verse was from 1 Peter 2, wanted to go through and emphasize the peculiar people to whom Peter's writing. And in the verse 1 of chapter 1, it talks about the elect exiles, which is just awesome language of this tension of us, the church that is chosen, elect by God, but then living in exile. And so we're displaced, or we are not welcomed in our lives where we live in the wider society, but are dearly chosen and loved by God, which is such an interesting contrast and really kind of hits the nail on the head as our experience in this world, or it should. So that was the first thing I did, was walk through 1 Peter. I know we preached a sermon. This is a highlight more than a series, but we co-preached twice. How many of y'all like that when Mac and I are co-preaching? Oh, no. They like it.
How many of us like it?
Well, we're not sitting on stools up there, so you like it better than
I do like it
me.
better when there's no stool. That's true.
The first one we preached together was on the big rocks. So that was one that we, talked about, 4 or 5 years ago. And we've talked about them some, but haven't talked about them as much as we need to. But we came back and preached together on the big rocks. What is it? What are our peculiar beliefs that's at the heart of our faith? I'll say more about this one in just a second, but I had a summer series on the fruit of the Spirit. I think there are 9 fruit of the Spirit. Maybe there's just 1 fruit of the
I
Spirit.
think it was about 18 lessons.
There's about 18 lessons.
Felt like it.
About 10 or 11 lessons that I got from that passage in Galatians 5. Good, and maybe you can share some on that in just a minute. And then, so I don't know what the title of the series in the fall. Y'all remember when I was really angry with everybody in like August?
It was called Ticking a Box for Jacob Landrum. That was the name of the series.
Jacob's not even here.
Everybody liked that series when you were sort of wagging your finger at us and telling us to be good. Y'all remember that? Matt came in here for about a month and he was like, "You people need to straighten up." And every week you had to go home and feel guilty and become a better person. Yeah.
All right, good. Well, I'll plan a month like that next year too. So it'll be really hard on me. Really
I did
taxing,
think it was good.
But Peculiar Church, I think, was the name of that, and emphasizing. Well, a couple of things that came to my mind in that series that I was doing. One was just trying to raise the expectations for us as members, and then also leaders. Those two in particular. We talked about other things there, but really just what does it really mean? What does it cost us to be a member of a church? And then, even more so for us as leaders.
Yeah, that language of cost, I remember being really key in that. The high demands, high expectations, this ought to cost a lot.
And then I had that sermon, here's another highlight, on after 15 years of ministry here. I was just an interesting year for me being here 15 years and reflecting on some things that y'all have taught me about life and God and all of that. Had a sermon on peculiar judgment, a part of our big rocks that we don't emphasize a lot, and me included there, of a judgment that we believe in, that God's going to judge the wicked, and judge all of us. And then the last 3 weeks, we've not really had a series title, but I hope that maybe some of you perceived some relationship between the sermons with God as giver. So we had Luke 10 that emphasized the Father's giving. Then we had 2 Corinthians 8, he became poor, Jesus is giving, and then the Spirit last week in Acts 2:38 and 39, that Christ pours out the Spirit on the church and gives the Spirit to us too. So that's me, Mac. What about you?
Well, as you were telling about that, I was remembering, I don't know if you guys were doing some of this. I remember oh yeah, I was sitting in the pew that day and I wrote this down, or I remember Matt saying this, but I also, as you were talking about those things, was reflecting back on small group time together and conversations in our small groups about these lessons. Some of y'all have that same experience? As you hear Matt remind us of the things that he talked about, say, oh yes, I remember a conversation we had about that after the sermon. A lot of times I think what happens in the sermon is important. What happens at the lunch table or around the small group or in conversation in the car on the way home is just as or even more important, where it's now we're reflecting. We've taken the bite and now we're chewing on it and bring it into ourselves, being changed by it. We had a number of classes this year, like I said, too many to write down, and some that I taught that I'd completely forgotten about. The first class I taught was on martyrdom and the martyrs. And it's been a long time ago, so I'd forgotten about it. But I remember that was hard to teach because it seemed like these heroes of the faith seemed so remote from my experience. I did not get up this morning and think, boy, I hope nobody comes in and kills me for being a Christian today. And so looking back on one peculiar thing about this church is that we are founded by Christ, who was himself a martyr, and the earliest witness was carried on by people who gave their lives for this. And so martyrs was a big one. Matt and I co-taught a class on technology for a few weeks about how the world relates to technology in a certain way. The church ought to be peculiar in our relationship to technology. I remember Mickey and I taught a class on singing, peculiar music and why we sing and how we sing. And I always like teaching with Mickey. I like teaching with you too, Matt. But I always like teaching with Mickey because Mickey was my teacher, so I feel like, oh man, I've really made it here to teach with my teacher. And to talk about music was just great in the upstairs room. I was looking over the ladies' classes. Of course, I'm not in the ladies' class, but some of the ones that were recorded, I was able to watch and blessed by some of that. I think about Gwen and Jess Lane teaching a class and the vulnerability that was on display there, where I thought, I bet this took a lot of courage to do this, and trying to be careful to think about deconstruction and reconstruction. How do you talk honestly in church about the fact that sometimes faith is hard? I thought about Ben's classes in here. Ben had that class on the peculiar priesthood. Ben loves to teach from the Old Testament, but to think about what a priesthood is and what an odd thing it is to say that the priesthood is different. And his class on peculiar Paul, Paul who was himself not a priest but a sort of priest in that he was an intercessor and a teacher and a preserver of God's word and God's covenant to the people. Cliff Copeland had a class on evangelism. One of the things that I heard come up several times this year in different classes or sermons or conversations was about evangelism. You may remember some things that got started at church this year, like the men's ministry got started this year. Another Cliff Copeland initiative to say, how can we be reaching out and expanding? Here's another one. Two of our college students, Grayson Kirkpatrick and Caleb Young, taught a class in the book of Acts. I'm curious, how many of y'all were in that class, the Acts class? I think that's really neat to look around and see people who, when we have these college students, they always ask, they say, well, where's the college class? And I always say, we don't have one. We're just a church. We determine our classes by the room they meet in more than by the demographics of the people around them. And so to have these two young guys who want to serve the Lord and want to teach, to say, we'll teach a class in the book of Acts. And then to see the church respond so well, I thought was really encouraging. Uncle Grant this year, I'm looking around for Grant this morning. There he is, yeah. Was teaching a class on anger and anger management, which I don't know, I think he told some of y'all this, but that came out of his volunteering to work with some young men through Options Pregnancy that we partner with to think about anger management for these guys who are the fathers of these unexpected pregnancies. And so I loved when he came and said, I'd like to teach this class, and said, well, I've been practicing teaching it because I'm volunteering doing this out in the community. See one of our shepherds doing that. I was really proud about that. Mickey taught Christ and culture in here. Matt taught for a long time on the mission of God. Y'all remember that class? He said Missio Dei every week. So we learned a little Latin. And there are more. I'm not trying to leave anybody out, but my list literally was about 36 classes, I think. So lots and lots of Bible classes this semester as well. And then the last one that you and I were teaching upstairs on the peculiar church, just the nature of the church as an unusual group. Thinking first about Christianity, churches of Christ, and then this particular congregation.
I was sad I missed Grant's class because I thought, deep down, I'm a very angry person, Mac. I don't know if we've talked about that. All right, good. Well, I'd probably need to talk to you one-on-one. I've got some bottled up anger in there, and I know I'm being a little playful, but also serious. So that's a great topic.
Did y'all know that? Did y'all know that Matt's an angry person?
I'm very angry.
It's true. He is. I always joke that Matt and Jenny are the same person, and Matt said to Jenny just last week, he said, Jenny, are you an angry person? And Jenny said, oh, yes. And Matt said, me too. And I said, I know.
I see it come out sometimes, especially parenting situations. You get, go to 0 to 100 in not very long. Yeah, Miss Linda, go ahead.
I was glad we had that on that anger too, because I had anger issues when I worked with Pathfinder. And they made me for like a month there. I had to rake all the leaves and clean up all the trash over at that center, where they take the trash up and stuff like that. I had to rake that whole area and clean it, and I had to pay $250 restitution. And I thought, when I was listening to that, I thought, that is so good, because all the time I was cleaning up the leaves and cleaning the area up, I kept saying, okay, I deserved it, but I'm glad, and I'm never going to do it again, because I see what comes of it,
That's good. I like to hear that.
Well, I love classes too that are honest and practical, and I think that's Grant. That topic was a great idea. Okay, so one of the things that I like to do in some of my classes up at Harding, we'll read books together. So Haley, you'll know about some of these questions coming up. We read books together, and there'll be 4, 5, 6 books that we'll read over the course of a semester. And the day that this book is due to have been read, I kind of have 3 questions, and they morph and change a little bit when we reflect together as a class on these books. 3 questions, and I thought those are good questions for us in thinking about our year together, just to kind of talk a little bit about, as we reflect on the year, these 3 different things. So here's the questions, and then we'll go through, Mac and I will go through each of these one by one. The first one is just, what did you love that we did this year? With the theme itself, or what we did with the theme, what part of it did you just really love? It was fun, it was interesting, entertaining, it was good, all of that, enjoyable. Okay, the second one was, what was personally challenging to you about the theme? So at what point in what we were talking about and all of those sermons and classes and things, were you convicted personally and thought, that's a hard word for me, I'm not sure that I'm there yet? And if we were the ones teaching or preaching, we thought, maybe somebody else ought to be up here teaching or preaching, because I'm not quite qualified to do this one. But something challenging. And then the third question, which kind of relates to the second one, is what work still needs to be done? Now, you just said that we kind of wrung all the, whatever it is, the
Juice,
liquid
I believe is what I
juice, wrung all the juice. What is juice in that you're wringing?
Well, it's in the theme.
In the theme. I mean, like a rag? You
Yeah.
put juice in a rag and wring it out?
Or a grape.
A grape, you
Ring
wring
a
out?
grape.
No, I don't. All right, anyway, so all of this juice out of the rag that we wrung. But still, there's stuff we could talk about. There's things with peculiar people, this idea of being different and standing out. The way that we relate to the world and interface with the world, all of that. There's more there. And so that's my last question is, what did we not talk about? Or what did we just talk about a little bit that we really need to talk about more? There's more work to be done. Not that we're going to have time to do that necessarily in the theme this year or even in next year, but just what are the things that we still have left undone? So what did you love? What were you convicted by or challenged by? And then finally, what work still needs to be done? So I'll start with the first one was, if I can share something that I did that I enjoyed doing, was this series on the fruit of the Spirit.
That's a very unusual thing for Matt to feel good about something he's done. He's also angry and self-critical. So I like that you're starting with something you did. That's good.
This is why I teach, because it's kind of like a therapy session for me to get all these things out. This book I've been reading said that it's about acting and theater, and they quoted the Judi Dench book on Shakespeare. It's so good. And have you read that, Mackie? You need to read it. It is so, oh man. There was a quote that said, acting is the shy person's revenge on the world. And I thought, that's why I like preaching, and I think that's why I liked acting, is because I'm shy, but I'm also like, gives me space to revenge. How did that connect, Mac?
It didn't. So what did you like about the theme?
Yeah. So you said it was.
No, you liked your own thing that you did.
Getting to share my own thing. So the series on the Holy Spirit, and I like that because just the idea of it was fun. Because I think so much of the time we expect the world to behave as Christians.
Yes.
And when people are not nice, or people are not, let's some of the fruit of the Spirit, when people aren't loving, when people aren't kind, when they're not gentle, when they're not self-controlled, we think, what's wrong with these stupid people for not being able to be more kind and gentle and loving and self-control? And we kind of forget that, well, we attribute those things to God in our lives,
right,
not just to our nature. So there's this weird tension of, well, yes, in one hand, these are common human things that all people can have, even if they don't know God. There's still people in the world who aren't Christians and don't know God who can be loving, who can be kind, and we know people like that. But to truly be kind and loving, we need to know Christ, right? And so there's this tension between what's kind of universal, these fruit that are universal and that are peculiar to us. And so kind of going through that series with each of those and trying to ask this question of, what is it about us as Christians? What is it about our fill in the blank as Christians? What is it about our love that is peculiar? What is it about our joy that's peculiar? That's not everybody has joy, but what is it about our joy that's unique? What is it about our peace, our self-control? That was a really fun question to ask and just kind of play around with.
Yeah.
So.
Matt, Rita helped me with that more than anything. Because I've always had trouble with relating to people and stuff. And she says, think of that. So she had me pay close, special attention. And I said, at the end of it, I was able to go, fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And you think of it, after a while, you're ready to just take them off verbatim, but she even knew the song to it.
Yeah, there's a little song.
And she knew the song, and she had me sing it along with it and everything like that.
David, what'd you have? That's right. Loving one another is pretty peculiar. We think of it as a normal thing, but the truth is, that's not a normal thing. I like that, and we talk about nature and grace, that God gives us a nature, but he also gives us grace to go beyond this, and those fruits of the Spirit hit on that. When I think about something from the theme that stood out to me this year that I liked, one is this class that I've been doing on Wednesday nights, this little book class. I love that book. I've read it several times. It's been a really formative one for me. But I've never read it at church with church people. And there are some people in that room that I'm used to reading books and talking with, but like my mom, and Jeff Wisdom's in that class. But Hannah Camp has been in that class, and Jacob has been in that class. And I have really enjoyed being in a small book-based class with them and watching them interact with that material. And so because the book we're reading is about how different the church is supposed to be from the world. It's very much on the theme. So hearing those two people in that class has been really transformative to me. Not just the idea, but the idea heard through the lens of a different person at church to talk with about it. That's been something I really appreciated.
All right, the next one is what was something that was challenging, and this one's kind of bigger, maybe not as specific as a series or an idea, but I think just the idea of being odd is really challenging. I don't know if that is for anybody else, but to be, because what I want is kind of that verse that says, desire to live a quiet, peaceful life, or like under the radar, that doesn't call attention to yourself. Nobody sees you. You don't disrupt anything. You don't cause any problems. You're just a source of positive influence in places, and that's my idea of being a Christian, as opposed to being the elect exiles that Peter writes to. Or in the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus says, you're the salt of the earth, and that salt is radically different. And if the salt loses its saltiness, it's no longer good for anything. It's just something else that's like everything else. And so it's distinct. And you're a city on a hill. So you're elevated. You're something that can be seen and attractive to people that they draw closer toward. And so just that idea of standing out is hard for me, because I want to be normal. My whole life I've wanted to be normal, Mac. I want to be normal. I want to just be a good person, right? And yet, as Christians, we're distinct, and there's no way around that. And just being more comfortable with being weird in certain ways. It's hard to be weird. Be a family that's weird. Have practices that are weird. Have ways of speaking, things that you do and don't do, separate from the world. That's just weird to people. Being more comfortable with that's challenging.
That was my big thing for the year, too, is being odd. I mean, Matt and I's personalities are very different. He shy, wants to be invisible, be good, by which he means don't stand out. I'm like, please give me all the attention everywhere, always, but also desperate that everyone would like me, and I would never be misunderstood and never be judged or excluded or criticized in any way. And so sometimes I think like, oh, it's easy to think, I don't want to be a peculiar person because that's not my personality. But it doesn't really matter what your personality is. When God calls you to be a peculiar person, it's going to require sacrifice and oddness and weirdness. And so the martyrs class is one that stood out to me as, oh, wow, if I really do follow Christ, the reaction of the world might not be to build a statue of me or tell everyone how great I am. It might be to hate me so much that they murder me. And to think that that's not like just a melodramatic thing, that was the norm for early Christianity. And the book that we're doing the class right now, of course, it's fresh in my mind, but he just keeps saying things like, Jesus wasn't crucified for telling everybody to be nice. Nobody kills you for saying things like that. He was crucified because he said, the world as you know it is upside down, and I'm here to straighten it out. And so, yeah, I felt that same thing, the challenge of how do I live into the oddness of my story. And if I'm going to be concrete about that, one specific thing, Dad and I have been talking about this the last few weeks, is thinking about relationship to the poor. I have what I think of as natural tendencies, and that is to have, sympathy and compassion for the poor, but also what I'm mostly looking for in my life is to not be bothered, not to be interrupted. I'm not looking for like a lot of needy people to come hang around me all the time and be needy. Take care of yourself. And, if we're going to hang out, everybody come, like with their stuff together and get along and we can enjoy each other. Not, I got problems again. I need help again. And just reading the Bible this year and listening to the sermons and thinking about how peculiar you are, one of the things that's so odd is that Jesus was always seeking out these people who needed help and had like chronic problems. And Jesus didn't seem to want to sort of like fix their immediate problem. They'd be like, okay, now good, you go on and do your life. I've fixed you, now you can go live on your own and not be a burden to me or anybody else. But rather to say, I've come to be with these people. And so that's been one that's been, I think, super challenging, that the response of the church to social problems or poverty or addiction. I'll talk about addiction some this year. The response of the church is to say, we are here with you and for you, and we long to pour ourselves out. I just think that's been really challenging.
Well, finally, I'll share and you share, and then maybe we can get some feedback from y'all if you have answers to any of these three questions that we've asked. What work still needs to be done? I think there's some overlap in my answer here with the second one of what was challenging, what work needs to be done, and that is the class that on evangelism. And I believe it was actually Ben that started that class, and I know Grant picked it up, and Cliff picked it up some, right? And then Grant, you've been doing some work over options pregnancy that's come out of that. I think there's a lot of really positive signs in our congregation that I love seeing. A lot of good momentum and a good direction that we're going. But boy, I think
new members and that kind of thing.
Yeah, new members and young families and
Good
all
energy.
this stuff. Just good. I mean, it just seems we seem healthy and vibrant, and thank God for that. But I think evangelism is something as a congregation and also personally that we don't do great at. And I'm not saying there aren't exceptions to that among us, but that's just, the church of a generation ago, I think, did a lot better at, and that we don't talk about it enough. I don't talk about it enough. I don't practice it enough. We don't have, and I don't want to reduce it to a program or an initiative, but there aren't things that we're doing enough that's explicitly calling people to obedience of the gospel, making that proclamation clear. That's something I've been challenged by. That's something that I think that, somewhere on the horizon of what we're doing as a church, we need to think about and do better at in some way, is just sharing the faith with people. Yeah, Grant, go ahead.
Uncle Grant, that is a great insight. I'm sitting here thinking, we need a class on how the church is different than the world when it comes to marketing or sales, or lots of times Christians like to look at it and say, well, how do you sell a product? The product we're selling is membership in this church. Let's sell it according to those rules. And Jesus comes along and, think how terrible a salesman he was. And people come to him and he says, I'm teaching in riddles and parables that no one will understand, lest they hear with their ears and understand and turn. Or they come and they say, what should I do? It doesn't say, well, if you could just commit 10% today and we'll see what happens in the future. He says, give away everything. So you're right. The evangelism of the church is very different than the way the world calls people to things. That's a good insight. When I think about what's left to be done, there are things that I think, man, you could squeeze on this for a long time and the juice won't run out. And it's that first thing you mentioned about nature and grace. I'm always interested in these kind of tensions where you have two poles, both of which are true in Christianity, and how do you navigate those? So one would be, we're all made in God's image. God's Spirit is given, in a sense, to the whole world. God has written the law on our hearts. There is eternity in our hearts. All people everywhere are without excuse, Romans says, because we know who God is. And there's another sense in which, no. What Christians believe is really unique and weird and odd. And how do we think well about interacting with our neighbors? And I think about everything from a friend of mine who's an atheist to how should Christians feel about Judaism and Jewish faith and the Jewish people today. I'm reading a lot of Holocaust literature right now, and that's making me think about that. How should we interact with other religions? Evangelism, yes, but also how do we reconcile the fact that sometimes we see the fruits of the Spirit in non-Christian people and we don't see them in Christian people, and why is that? Those questions to me they never get old, they never get boring. It's a conversation that keeps being rewarding, because about the time you know, well, this can't be right, you move over here, then you move back. And so that motion, I think, is a helpful, healthy way of thinking about what it is that God has done and is doing in the world.
Well, let's see if there's any of y'all that want to share on any of these. I don't think we'll go one at a time. Probably just lump them all together. So something you loved, or something that was challenging, or something that you feel like is still work that we need to do. And I can bring the mic around to you. Carol, are you about to raise your hand? Okay. I know you well enough to, that's the just before you raise your hand pose.
Well, it's already been mentioned, but I think the thing that means the most to me was the feelings and reaction of people talking about their problems and their solutions and how to help other people with their problems and solutions. And you feel like they're really family, that they show their love for us and ask for us show their love for them. And that just, well, they call it family relationships, what I think.
Let's go to Justin.
I really liked the Fruit of the Spirit lessons that you did. I think we could use some more that were like that, where we're in a text that's really hitting hard on ways that we need to be living and acting, and things that we could have through the Spirit if we, do what we're supposed to be doing. So that was a good topic. That was my favorite series for the year. The other thing that I really liked was the class that Grant just did. And I think it was a little too short. I didn't realize that I was so angry, and it's really helped me a lot. So I think that having some more time in that could be beneficial.
Somebody else on Matt's side.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
And I'm looking for somebody here to hand this mic to.
Just to touch on what Justin said about the fruit of the Spirit, I really enjoyed the fact that it is a fruit, not a series. It's not a punch bowl. And just one fruit that God gives us all this stuff, and not one little thing.
Y'all are raising my expectations of summer series, because that was a summer series, and I tend to think no one's here in the summer, they're in and out, and is anybody even listening to these? And here we are talking about the Fruit of the Spirit series, so I'm encouraged. Thank y'all for that.
I'm thinking about a couple of things from classes from the ladies' class. In the summer, we just read through the book of Mark together. I didn't have really anything prepared. We just read the text together and prayed and invited the Holy Spirit to kind of bring up some things in our minds that were coming to the surface as we read. And that was a really beneficial experience for me. And I think that it was really special to just have everybody kind of talk through what they were seeing and not to have anything necessarily prepared. I also was really challenged by the class that Paige taught this fall on Wednesday nights. She taught a class that encouraged us to have a kingdom-minded mindset about our bodies and to think about our bodies as being good, which is a real challenge for many of us. And so that was challenging for me in a lot of ways, but also very beneficial. I was very grateful for Paige to listen to the Holy Spirit and step forward in that way.
Got time for about two more. And if nobody raises their hands, I'm going to put the microphone in the hand of a shepherd. So, Mickey, Dad, y'all better be perking up, praying for a hand to go up. Something that you loved, something that challenged you, something that you say, I'd like to hear more about this, or there's more to explore on this. Okay, Caitlin.
I really like Paige's class though, because it taught me how to accept my body the way God sees me, because I've struggled with like body image all my life, and I definitely feel like I walked out of that class like a totally different person with a new perspective on how I see myself, because I've just like grown up being very skinny though, and like being insecure about it. And I feel like ever since this class, I have learned that God made everybody different, and like I have learned to accept that's who I am, pretty much.
That's very good. Thank you. Thank you. Mickey, what's something this year that's challenged you, or something you've loved, or something you'd like to hear more? Mickey's like Matt, he's shy, but he has great things to say usually.
When Matt did the finger wagging series, about how we need to be better, that I was touched by each one of those.
Somebody back here, Mom?
Here's something that I wish we had done all year, was learn the song with that verse in it so that everybody would remember it. So I think that still needs to be done.
Mickey wrote a song for that. We sang it once, and oh, not Mickey's song, to be clear. Not Mickey's song. We didn't want to learn that one, God forbid. I'm sorry, Mickey. We're working on kindness as a fruit of the Spirit around here. I do like that idea of when we have songs that connect with the passages that we do. Miss Sarah, I think Sarah will be the last comment, and then Matt, you want to land the plane here for us.
This is just more of something that I enjoyed in a church service a couple of weeks ago when a scripture was read before the song. This whole song had a different meaning to me when that was done. And I also told him he needs to go into sportscasting or something because it was a great voice to just hear over the thing. But anyway, and another thing I'll just throw out there is that an overall word of what this whole series has just been the bravery of everyone, both in comments and classes, and the teachers willing to share their stories. It's been really encouraging.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. Well, one of the things that we hope happens over the course of a year is that this language gets ingrained into us. Because, I know it's tempting for us to think that this is the sermon series theme, or this applies for some of the Bible class teachers, this is what they're doing. But this is really a church theme for the year, that we take an entire year really to unpack one idea, this idea of being a peculiar people, and all these classes and all the sermons and all the small groups and all of those things, so that it becomes part of us. Because we actually do want this not just to be, well, 2025's over, we can move on to something else, forget everything that we talked about. And so one of my favorite things is when I get to, I'm always listening. I don't know if you know this about me, Miss Linda, I'm always listening. But I'm listening to conversations in the foyer and at potlucks and at fellowships and things. And when someone uses language like peculiar, and the way that we're using it, I think, hey, that's a great signal, because that means it's getting through. That means people are internalizing it. They're thinking about their experience in these terms, and they're applying it to their lives. And so that's one of my favorite things. And I think this year, maybe there's one or two other year themes that we've done, but this has been, I think, a very successful theme, because it has taken hold on a lot of us.
I think that's right. And there's so much that we couldn't cover this morning. I just was, even as you said that, I was thinking about bulletin articles. How many bulletin articles were titled peculiar whatever? And we've got so many great writers in our church that minister to us in that way. I was thinking about our worship and witness nights that we did this year, some of which were really, really powerful. And other things that aren't teaching related, but nevertheless get a lot of work done in forming us into peculiar people, like collecting yams, like Matthew 25 ministry, like a trip to Belize. I was thinking about that the other day, like peculiar vacation. People who say, I want to go to a part of the country where it's a part of the world where it's poor, and work hard for a week, and that's what I take off time to do. So many things like that. There's more to say, and I hope that as you guys leave, that the conversation continues, that you reflect back over what was the year like, what was the theme like, and continue this thing of peculiarity. Matt we'll all be back in here next week. I'm out of town, and so Matt will lead the class, but look forward to seeing you guys then. Thank you all so much.